Hello and welcome to Stylish Chats with Creatives. Today on the podcast, I'm speaking to Sam Jones. Sam is an art director and photographer based in Manchester, and we've actually just discovered we both know some of the same people from a different studio, which is classic. I think classic creative, no matter where you go, you seem to know somebody that somebody else knows. So welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm really intrigued in your journey because you've been a photographer and then sidestepped into art directing. I know they kind of go hand in hand, but explain to me what the move was there, how you got into art directing.
Yeah, I get this quite a lot actually. And I think, do you know what? I don't blame people either, because when I was kind of looking at the sort of role and what existed when I was a lot younger, it did sort of come from graphic design, came from styling, and I guess every role evolves with different things, don't they? Digital for one, and how social media and stuff was sort of grown. But I'd gone to uni. I'd always kind of had an interest in fine art and the sort of physicalities of it. So I started off with printed and working with photography in a mixed media sense. And yeah, I did a fine art degree at Newport, which is kind of RIP at the moment. I'm very sad about it, but all the same lecturers are still there and they still did an amazing job. So yeah, that's really good. And the course just gave you a massive free range on photography. You could kind of go documentary style, sort of fashion led style. You could kind of work with photography in any sense really. So yeah, analog, printing sort of large format, working with working in the color dark rooms, black and white photography, anything. So yeah, in basic terms, my degree was just sewing into imagery for my third year, and it was very calming actually, amongst being very, very stressed. Just kind of printing photography onto fabric and then just kind of sewing into them. And I'd always kind of had a love for a narrative, and I kind of felt what I kind of wanted to do was work more with ideas and kind of find the best people to be able to execute them. I felt that's kind of where my strengths were. I could always see a huge creative talent in people, and quite negatively, never really in myself, but I always pick up on people's strengths and go, oh, you're actually really good at that. I think you should do that. Or can we work on something and let's build something really good. So I always try to foster that and kind of recognize that I enjoyed doing that. Not necessarily that I was good at it, but yeah, I'm just pulling people together throughout uni, throughout my life, always looking at things and sharing things with people. And the more I kind of got into the creative industries, the more I realized actually those kind of skills work in that sort of role. I'd kind of entered the industry through a really, really weird process, actually. I grew up in South Wales. I studied in South Wales. I don't know about a lot of other places in the UK, but I'm pretty sure there's similar things where there aren't really that many opportunities for a lot of creatives, unless you kind of make your own opportunity, I find. So coming out of university, they sell you this dream, you'll have loads of jobs, everyone will come running after you, and naively I was just kind of that didn't happen. And at the time I was working in a clothing store, and I was just kind of experimenting with VM, and I thought, oh, this is quite creative, this is really cool, maybe this is my little jump into the big jump or wherever. And I kind of just followed that journey. When I was 16, I always kind of wanted to go to London. I always kind of found London as this real magic. I guess when you come out of the South Wales valleys where nothing's shiny, there's no billboards, there's no buzz, everything's peace and quiet, which I love now. You go to London, you're like, wow, this is amazing. There's so much going on, and you get sucked in, I think. And then the more you look into it, the more you realize, actually, I think this is where I'm meant to be, right now. So I kind of got this obsession with I need to go to London, And I'm sure a lot of people maybe had the same journey as me. And even my partner actually had the same journey as me, and he's not in the creative industries at all. I think it's just that's where all the opportunities are. Go, just go and make some magic. And I did eventually do that, and I got a job in VM. And I just remember I'd worked for I think I'd worked for River Island, and I remember contacting head office at the time, being like, "Do you have any work experience? Do you have any graduate roles, etc.?" Nothing. I think so. This was probably like 2014. There wasn't really the kind of like bubble of graduate jobs then. I remember after I left that role, there was loads, and I was like, "Damn it, a little bit too early." But there wasn't really that going on, and like there was still the kind of unpaid internships and everything in like different houses and stuff. But there was a real vibe for like test shoots and things like that. So I was like, oh, maybe I can go do this job, do some test shoots and see what happens, right? So I did manage to get a job actually working for New Look, which was really cool, to be fair. Everyone was really nice. It was a real good real good store vibe. I don't know if you've ever worked in a store where you have to hit like targets and you're in this kind of like group bubble. Yeah, they had that down to a T.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was really good. But it didn't last long. I actually saw a studio assistant job go up for River Island in the studio, and I was like, oh, this could be a really good foot in the door. It actually sounds like really cool, like assistant photographers and stylists. And like in my head at the time, everything was so like far above me, like, and real, just like out of reach. So I was like, yeah, I think I could do that. And I remember going for the interview, and like a lot of opportunities that I've had, I always remember applying, and then I'm sat there on my first day. There's no in between. And like I remember the trial, I remember meeting the people, and it's actually quite a nice story about that one, where the people I met on my trial, I met I'd met two junior stylists that had just gone into their roles, and they were both bridesmaids of my wedding. So yeah, it's actually a really nice story.
Nice.
And then yeah, one of the other girls was a bridesmaid at my wedding, but she worked on a different department in another job. So yeah, I just remember applying for the job, sitting there the first day, but like we did have a trial and everything, and the trial was really cool. And I just remember getting there being like, oh my god, I'm like working in head office, guys, like this is well cool. When you're like, oh, this sounds really lame in your head, but it's just like this was 10 years ago. Like I was probably 22. Like that is quite scary. That is still really young. Like, I always have to give myself a pat on the back and go, like, you made a massive move in a country with nobody and you just gave it a go, and you had a dream and you kind of followed it. And I did that job for a year, and it was really, really good. I would always say to anybody in my situation, or where you need a bit of a foot in the door, like, just go and do a studio assistant job. It's so varied. You get to like talk to so many random people doing like really cool jobs, from like buyers, designers, web, IT, no, definitely IT, like heads of people that just see you in a lift and go, love your outfit, and you're like, god, who are they? And then you go to look them up and you're like, oh my god, I was in the lift with like some senior person. You're like, whoa, did I smile enough, and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, you just get really involved, and because you haven't got too much riding on you, you kind of can flex between a lot of stuff, and you can be a bit cheeky. And I was very fortunate at the time, like anytime anyone went to the bathroom or stepped outside for a call or was on annual leave, that I was like, can I just photograph? Like, I can do this, you know what I mean? Like, I'm a photographer, I'm trained in lighting, and I've done loads of test shoots and stuff. I was like, I can do this. And I was very lucky that the studio manager at the time was just like, yeah, like you can do that. And I think I built up a bit of a portfolio. Just kind of getting used to the studio environment is one thing they really don't teach you at uni as well.
Yeah,
it's just sitting down going, right, here's capture one, here's live view, here's what's working with someone who's operating those kind of things on the other end of the camera for you. And just getting used to that and the studio dynamic and stuff, and understanding how long things take and how you can make things really efficient and stuff. And I remember alongside that doing like Saturdays at Topshop, funnily enough. Remember going to Oxford Circus really, really early at like 6 a.m. I think we did like a 7-4. And at the time I did it kind of sneakily against my job, because I kind of thought, oh god, they're going to get a bit funny here. But like, it sort of gave me another experience and realised how non-different they actually were. And I was like, I can definitely do this. And it was only a year contract, actually. I think in that role, they obviously just wanted to kind of give someone a chance, and if there was a role available, they move into it. If not, they move on, kind of thing. I wasn't quite ready to move on. I was going for like a load of interviews and stuff, but like, interviews obviously work two ways. Like, you've got to like the place as well. And I remember going for a few things, I really didn't get a good vibe from it. Like, I went to this one studio, which is there's obviously a few that existed at the time, and they have a different like loads of brands that they photograph for, and it's mainly ecom. And I just remember turning up being like, oh hi, I didn't really know where the reception was. like looking back on it, they did say that they'd had like an incident where their roof had sort of leaked, so everything had just moved around. But kind of walked through this door and was like, "Hi, I'm here for an interview," and they were just like, "Oh, okay," and they couldn't find my name anywhere, and I was just like, "Oh, let it be." Like they obviously look a bit flushed. Um, and then the guy came and collected me and just casually stopped me on the set and was like, "Here you go," with this stylist, and the stylist was just sat there on her phone. And I thought, oh, this is like completely different to where I've been. Like everyone's usually like, "Hi, how are you? Here's this, let's show you this, set you up and leave you go." And I thought, oh, okay, I don't really like this. And then the day, like I thought, oh, it'll get better throughout the day. And they just moved me to different bits and it didn't get any better. And I thought, oh no. And there's a few places that I went to at the time and sort of interviewed for that because obviously, like my contract was ending, my manager would let me go off and interview. I wasn't doing any of this on the sneak. Um, and then a job actually came up. One of my friends who I'd report into at Rivet, just to liaise with like samples and stuff, she was actually leaving. And she was like, "Do you want my job?" She was like, "It's really interesting. You learn a lot about the online side of the team, like reporting, working with like the online merchandisers and different things. And also working with the guys that work on campaign to sort of like carnet and pack all the suitcase and stuff like that." And that sounded wicked at the time. I thought, yeah, brill, I'll do that. Interviewed for it and got it. And it was great. And the job was exactly what it was. And again, I got to learn like econ from a different side of it, of like from all the merchandisers and all the kind of like the buyers, and the campaign side of it was really exciting. And everyone kept whispering about the perks of like going on like a shoot and stuff, and you could be all the like the steamer and the prepper, which I think if I look back on it now, I'm like, oh, I don't know if I'd like to do that. But at the time, I was like, yeah, this sounds great. And yeah, there was many suitcases that came back from really nice exotic locations of like South Africa and Mexico, where I'd be like emptying lovely white sand out of kids' shoes, thinking, God, I hope my life gets to this point. Like this is great. And I was like, someone's got to do the emptying of the suitcases. So I did that for like 3 months, and then a job came up for Net-a-Porter as a photographer, as a junior photographer, and I was like, ooh, this like I didn't really know much about them at the time because it's not something I'd been surrounded by like growing up and things. And like I'd seen adverts around London. I remember researching, I was like, oh, this sounds really good. And I was like, oh, a bit of still life as well. I was like, I'd not really done any of that at all. So I'd applied, and then again, classic thing where you apply and then you're sat there on your first day like, how did I get here? And like I loved, like, as much as River Island as well, I loved working at Net-a-Porter. It's probably is up there with like my favourite places to work. The people were amazing, like so many creative people from different walks of life, all just under this one roof in Shepherd's Bush. And like, yeah, it's just, yeah, like friends for life for a lot of people as well, I'm sure. And like there's still a lot of people now that I was hired with that still work there today. So that's, I think, like when you see long service, you think, oh yeah, great. And like the work, like you just learn so much. Like that was for me the next step of like photography, because when I was testing, I was kind of testing with models, and I remember doing it and not finding an absolute love from it. I think I got like, because obviously it's all Saturday testing and things, like a lot of them wouldn't turn up, and then you'd have a makeup artist, you've then got to kind of go, I'm so sorry you wasted your Saturday and came like 2 hours on the train. Or you just be going around like to all these different studios, and like we had one where the electric cut out halfway through, and like the guy just wasn't contactable, and I was like, come on, like, and he's like, you can stay later, and then the model's like, well, I can't. And you just had, like, there was so much about like model photography at the time that I was just like, I'm just pushing something that's not working here. But at Airport, I got to try like there was so much variety. There was model, there was kind of like your flat lay sort of still life that you would kind of have, online. And then there was like jewellery, fine jewellery as well. And that's kind of where I found my love. And I thought, oh, still life is what I really, really enjoy doing. Particularly jewellery. Give me something reflective, give me something shiny, give me something like circular where you have to cover it up at literally like a globe. And I love it. Give me a model and a couple of sets of loads of people, I'm probably like, oh, I don't know. But yeah, that's kind of my bag. I learned after that, photographing things that are like, oh, I don't know, like 2 millimeters or something like that. And then you got to try and string it up, and they're dangly, and the aircon's blowing, or someone walks past and it's gone, and you've missed the set. Or like, I don't know, photographing like a fine watch that costs more than like most people's houses and stuff like that. It was so varied. It was so interesting. And it's just like another part of my life that I was just like, I'm so lucky I got to do that. And then I left. I went back home to Wales for a bit, and worked as like a sort of photographer, videographer for a company back in Cardiff. And yeah, those guys are really impressive. It's a bit like how I've described people, and not to undermine them in any way. It's kind of like what it's like ASOS for beauty, and it's in Wales, and they really celebrate like getting Welsh talent. You know, they employ people from like the universities and stuff like that straight out of school and give them work experience. And yeah, I think it's great. And you know, the guys were really, really lovely. I sort of spent a short time there, and then I knew I wanted to go back to London, so I kind of did a bit of a loop. Um, I know, I was just like, oh, because I didn't want to freelance at the time when I left, and then I kind of did. I wanted to go to another full time job, because you know when you get to that point of your job when you're like, I think I'm kind of done. Yeah, I'm going to look for another opportunity, but I'm not rushed. That's
Yeah.
kind of what I did, but I for some reason did it in rush, and just went back home, had a bit of a breathing space, because I was like, maybe I don't want to be in London. Like, you know, it is a bit of a tough city as well. Like, especially if it's not somewhere you're from, it is massive, and you know, it's not
It's
really
quite
that forgiving, is it?
No, it's quite intense. Whenever I've been like, this feels like a really intense city. It's different to Manchester, where Manchester feels a bit more copable,
Yeah,
like a bit more like manageable. And London feels like really intense, and nobody smiles at each other, and everyone's just like getting on with their day. So I understand the need for like taking a step out to see whether you like it, to step back in, I
yeah.
guess.
And I think I was with who was now my husband, my partner at the time, and I moved and just kind of left him there, bless him. But and then it came to like a January, and I was like, no, I'm going to go back to London. I'm going to freelance. I want that variety. I want to check where else is out there. And I ended up photographing in a few places, mainly just ecom. But I did do a few creative bits here and there, still within jewellery, which was great, because I know that's very niche and very hard to come by. Um, and I actually ended up assisting a guy called Sam Chick, and he's a really, really lovely guy. Probably bothered him for ages to be like, can I assist you? I've always wanted to like work on a car shoot. I was like, big shiny metal, give it to me. And you know, eventually he was like, yeah, brill, let's do it. And it was a shoot in like an auction house, and we had to shoot it at night when it was shut, also when it's not there's no light reflecting anywhere. And it was just so amazing to see like how that works. And I'm like, do you know what? You get to that point in your life where you're like, you think you can't do it, so you try to figure out how to do it. And I sat there and I was like, I could do this. I just needed the confidence to do it, and like maybe all the means and everything else. Like, but yeah, it was great. And he was
Yeah.
such a nice guy to learn from and stuff. And it wasn't long after that, I think, then I ended up in Dublin. And again, that was another classic thing where I was halfway through my freelance, and I was looking at like my next move of like, let's stay on track here about like, how do we get the creative side, and how do we get the sort of photographic side, and the sort of like helping people and helping creatives and stuff all into one. And I started looking at like sort of studio manager roles, and a lot of them were kind of like, you know, coming up with like ecom guides, which at the time I'd obviously done a lot of ecom photography and an ecom, coming up with loads of different guys, working with a stylist, and you know, those kind of overhauls. So I was looking for something that kind of did that. This like amazing opportunity came up in Dublin to work for a global high street retailer. There we go. And I'd always wanted to live abroad. I'd wanted to go to New York, but my dreams slightly got crushed by, I think that's when Trump just came in office. And I remember looking at all the visa applications and different things like that. And I was just like, there's no way this dream was going to happen at the time. And it was all like
Yeah,
Brexit
yeah.
time. This was like 2016 or something. And I was like, maybe I go to Europe. But then I was like, you know what? I selfishly probably don't know any languages. And I was like, I'd need to learn a language to go. There's no point in me learning while I'm there. I need the base of something. So when I saw Dublin, I thought, oh, this is perfect. I was like, it's not too far away from home. It's a flight. So it's far enough away that you've got a bit of a barrier, you know, the sea.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but it's close enough. And I think, you know, maybe in my head I was a little bit naive that it would be exactly the same as where I've just come from, or maybe where I'm actually from in that case. And it's definitely not. And I'm glad of that actually, so because I've got a bit of variety. But the role was everything. You know, it was like looking after ecom, managing a team of like photographer, stylist, a retoucher, and a studio assistant. Um, and it was a brand new studio, so you get to put your mark on something. I thought, oh, this would be really great actually. This is everything that I wanted. And I was like, oh, like help loads of people and creatives, and we can build a really, really good team. And this was January 2020, so you kind of know what happened next. I think most people know what happened next. COVID came along like 2 months later. We had a good ball rolling. We were doing really, really well. Not to say we failed at all. We still did well. We still did amazing. In fact, to get through all of COVID, we all did great. But yeah, it kind of threw a spanner in the works, and it sort of changed everything. And I was saying this just because of the journey I've made. I was saying this to a friend the other day. I was like, I actually think life kind of just does roll things for you, and whether you try to stop it or change it or not, it still throws you on a bit of a path.
Yeah.
And I think this is kind of like all of my career. Not that I believe, like, I think I do believe in some like kind of like other being or like non-free will or something like that. But everything that I've come by has kind of come by like without me consciously thinking about it, but still actively doing it.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'd got up until March, and obviously then like kind of COVID hit, and we all sort of had to work from home. We had to figure out all these different operational plans, but everyone did. And I think we were all really, really fortunate to be able to carry on working and do what we did. You know, it was tough, and it was tough going to a different country, and it was tough seeing other people move to a different country, and you're not able to help them. And, you know, everyone was in different situations, but I feel like the whole globe also was in that. It's just how you dealt with your little pocket, I guess, you know. None of us ever expected to kind of go to another country, be on their own with no friends, and but like, you know, thank God we have like technology like Zoom and stuff. I think all I ever remember was I hope I don't get COVID while I'm on my own. And bank holidays are long, like 4 days with just being like everyone's on a different Zoom call, and you're like, God, I need to do something. And it was at the time like in Ireland, the restrictions were really, really like restrictive, I guess. I think like in March we'd gone on holiday, and it was fine before we left. Well, kind of, you knew things were going on, but I think no one really knew what it was going to be. Everyone thought it was going to be like a week and
Yeah.
we're back to normal. So we kind of went on holiday, and halfway through it, like they were like, okay, we're shutting the whole country down. And then this is when our TUI was like, oh, we need to repatriate you all to the UK. And we were like, this is just insane. And this is mad. And then now we're looking back and are going, we shouldn't have gone. We were like, you know, in our heads, we were like, we would have lost a load of money. We shouldn't have gone. But at the same time, it was kind of a bit of a blessing that we went, because we were able to spend time to each other. And like, then obviously we landed back in Gatwick probably 4 days shy of what we should have done. I said goodbye to him. He went to the southwest to his parents because we'd handed our notice in our flat. So we were like, kind of homeless after this.
Yeah.
He'd gone back to the southwest. I then got the next flight to Dublin, which was the most painful 10 hours I had to wait in Gatwick Airport. And you can't check in until 2 hours before if you've got checked baggage. I was just like, ugh. And then, I went back to Dublin, and it was like an absolute ghost town. That airport that is like so busy it was empty. There was nobody there. There was people handing out leaflets, signage everywhere. Like, they may as well have a cling film the airport is how I can describe it. It was mad, but it was such a mad time as well. But I'm like, I guess, and everyone that was doing something thought that they were doing the best thing, you know. And then we just worked from home for ages. I remember that. We were like, right, let's just use this time to do all the admin we won't get time to do, all the like styling guides, the photography guides, and you know, when this all, you know, in our heads, when this all blows over, we'll go back in. And that was obviously longer than we thought it was. And then we'd eventually did go in, and we were photographing one in, one out. You know, a lot of studios had worked out some really cool plans as well. And I think we'd done a pretty solid one. Like, we were all pretty safe. None of us had got COVID, I think, until, you know, when it came to the point where the real loose, like, restrictions were kind of coming about, where you could go to the gym, you could pretty much do anything, you could go on holiday. Then we were a bit like, oh God, what do we do? And I think, most of us were pretty much like a whole year in before any of us had got anything. I think I was the first one, actually. And I got it from going to the gym, and but I'd had it the same time as like I got my first vaccine. So in my head, I was like, I'm just ill for my vaccine. And I remember going to work, and I was like green. I was like, so I'm going to go home. I don't feel the greatest. I was like, I'm not going to risk it. I didn't even say goodbye to the guys. I just texted them as I'm going, just in case it is something sinister. And then just sent someone in to go and clean the room after me, because I was like, oh. And then, yeah, lo and behold, I had COVID, and it was absolutely horrendous. My partner was here at this point, so I wasn't on my own. I didn't get my wish. But yeah, it was an absolute crazy time. And but I think that point for COVID did a lot for everybody. Like, this is where the kind of transformation for me became kind of, we'd done all the kind of like e-com side of it, managed a studio, and then we'd started kind of absorbing quite a lot of creative stuff, which was brilliant. Like, and the guys were absolutely prepared to do it, which was fab. And we'd like absorbed all the home, we'd absorbed all the flat lay, all the social, and that just became our life then from like beyond that point. And it's a bit of saving grace, really. Like, we got to then all set builds, do a bit of food styling, do absolutely anything that like we could throw it at, basically.
That's actually, sorry, that's actually really nice, especially after like COVID, because COVID was so shit for all of us. And like you were saying, like it was different in different studios. There were studios where I had to go in and be tested before I went in. I had like the thermometer put on my head. Some people wanted you to wear a mask, some didn't. It was like crazy. So for them, it was absolutely fucking bonkers. And I think for you guys then to absorb all the creative stuff after that, like, shitstorm, that's actually really nice for your like crew to have then gone and got something really creative out of it. Because I think even now, nearly 5 years on after 4 and a bit years on after COVID, I feel like I still feel the effects of COVID, not personally on myself, but as in sometimes product is a lot slower, the way people book people is slower because product isn't arriving, and all of that kind of logistics behind us even getting the product to shoot it, all of that's been affected. And I think that people are still figuring out the way to move forward with it.
Yeah, I get you on that, actually. And you can definitely notice a difference. Yeah, there is a lot of changes for the positive. And like, I do feel for people that had it negatively impacted. I know a lot of my friends were like, oh, you're furloughed, now you're not, now you are, now you're not. And that would have driven me absolutely up the wall, alongside of like, the whole country not being what you've seen it as, and like, I think in our lifetime we'll be ready for round 2, like, not to be negative, and I'm not cursing it in any way, but I think this won't be our first rodeo for sure. Like, things like this are going to happen. And I think, especially in the creative industries, I think it's made me a little bit more kind of aware to like, if this does happen again, if this doesn't work out for you, what are you going to do? And I think I'm hoping anyway I'd be all right, but like, also to kind of back yourself, get your skills, like get as many things as you could. And I think I'd kind of come not to the end of that role, but I kind of felt like I was like, I've completed for my like fulfillment of what I could possibly do. And I was like, I'm lacking that real creative bit that I wanted. So I was like, I wonder what else is out there in the business. And I tried to get myself involved in, I did some mentoring, which is really, really good. They're very good at sort of offering like wider opportunities within the business, not just within your kind of sector. And I did some mentoring for like master students and stuff. And that was really, really good to see them help and grow and kind of advise them on their projects and stuff. But I still wanted like some physical creative things. And at the time our art director left, she had an opportunity in another part of the world, funnily enough. And then I was just kind of like, oh, I need to do what she's doing. I was like, this sounds like a bit me. I was like, this is perfect. And at the time, the role was very different. So the minute she left, I was like kind of stood there like, okay, when's this role going to go up? I was like, I'd really like to maybe start seeing if I can work on stuff within that role to kind of get myself some experience. Because I think sometimes when you work in-house, if you haven't quite had those like matching skills, you're not always the first thought for people. They will always kind of go quite external. So I was always worried that like, and plus I was in a role when I was doing things, people would never think, oh yeah, she would be great for this, let's do it. So I remember having a couple of conversations and I was like, I think this is what I want to do. And then I had to do the real sad thing of like, when the role went up, of being like, I really want to apply for this, I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
you don't want to upset anyone, you don't want to burn any bridges, and you don't want to like, I don't know, I was always really conscious of that, to be honest. I never wanted to leave anywhere in a bad way. But yeah, so I applied for the role, and then kind of got it, and here I am now. And it's very, very different from when I started. Like, I mean, we were doing sort of like small scale shoots, small home shoots, small sort of like socially bits, and then it just bubbled. I don't really know where, and I think the more maybe the business sort of saw that we were doing, they were like, "This is great, let's block some more of that on there." And I think maybe more asks probably came from the business as well. Like after COVID, a lot of things changed, so different ways of kind of like approaching other customers and reaching out to different people. I guess people had to kind of react to that. And I felt like it's a lot more reactive now after COVID. I think things are very fast in that way. I know what you mean in terms of like products and things being, people sort of holding things into one bit until they know they can kind of release it. But when it's released, by God, you need to grab it. So that's all changed. So now my role is, I would say, is quite heavily weighted in sort of like home and interiors, which I love. Like, it's so nice to put a set together. It's so nice to work with like different stylists, and see the trends come through. But like also how you take a trend, which is kind of probably sits somewhere luxury, it's influenced by a designer, and then you mold that into what's good for your customer and what you're putting out there, while still like remaining on trend and trying something really new. And then working with, you know, because it's a massive company, working with like larger teams as well. You know, I'd gone from working at River maybe with like one or two people to at Net-a-Porter being a studio of like probably 250 people. And then we're kind of, you know, the studio's not huge, it's not small, but like, you know, the wider sort of creative is quite big. So having to work with like loads of other different areas as well is really, really interesting. And yeah, that's kind of where I am now. We've relocated to Manchester, so back to the UK. This happened this summer. And like you said, like Manchester's a great city. Like I'm really excited to move forward with that. You know, I loved my time in Dublin. We had like just shy of 5 years there. You know, met some great people there. Dublin's a great city. Like, you know, if you're really interested, it's got such a like a great sort of hospitality scene, and it has like a really cool creative scene as well. But I wouldn't say, for me anyway, like it wasn't like in your face creative, but you'd find some really, really cool things. And, you know, just paying a fiver to get to the beach was also a bit of a bonus.
Yeah.
So all those little things where it's like, it's a big sort of cosmopolitan city, because people think, oh, it's just this tiny island, but you get people from all over the world coming to Dublin like every single day. And yeah, it's just got so much going on for itself. It is kind of comparable to London in a way, but yeah, they are slightly different as well. Obviously, like it's a bit more of that kind of home feel. People's homes are kind of on like your equivalent of like Tottenham Court Road to London. Do you know what I mean? That's sort of close to town, and people walk to work and stuff. Like, but it's still a massive city, and yeah. So yeah, I'm excited for Manchester because it seems completely different at the moment. Different to London. People are, no offense to you guys from London, people are a lot more warmer. And it was kind of instant to the point that my defenses went up. I was like, right, okay, everyone's nice for a week, so when are they all turning horrible? And I was just like, this is not happening. This is brilliant. And it made the move like such a dream and so nice, because you don't have to worry about like any of that. Like I know I go to work and I'm like, this is seamless. Everyone's really lovely. Everyone sticks their head in the door and says, hi, how are you? How's your weekend? And you could tell they like really care and really listening to you. And I love that. I thought, oh yeah, this is really great. And like we've had some people like offering us to stay in places and different things that were there, and like people really want to help us. And I was like, oh, I like this can't go badly. Like this, well, I'm hoping it doesn't anyway. This can't go badly. But I think, like I was saying to you earlier before this, like you take for granted when you move to a country to when you come home all the kind of random personal admin that you have. And a lot of people forget that because you're from the UK, you automatically know when you come home what you have to do, and it's like, no, I don't actually. I don't remember if you've got to live where your doctor's is and how you get a dentist appointment, and do you have to queue outside the door for the doctors now? You know, all these little things. Like I don't remember that, unfortunately. But yeah, no, I think it'll be really good, and I'm really excited to kind of see the sort of like next part of my journey, if that makes sense. How we can take what we've already done, and I feel like now we've kind of got maybe more tools and more access to different things, and how we can kind of grow and evolve from that. Really, I think it's really exciting.
And I think, do you know what? You're so right about Manchester, because I'm originally from down south. And then when I came up to Manchester, I was like, oh, these guys are all
Yeah,
friendly. Everyone's got good banter
yeah,
level.
yeah,
They're all having a laugh. Like nothing's too serious. And I think that everybody is so warm, no matter like if you've met them before or not. Like I've had the similar experience to you where people are like, oh, how was your weekend? Or I remember actually really vividly when I first came up to Manchester, I'd crashed my
oh
car. So
God.
I had to hire a van because that's all that I could get. And then the local newspaper had come out and it was on the table at work. And the photographer, he actually lives in the same town that I live in. And he was like, oh, Charlotte, is this you? And there was like on the front page, it was a picture of a van that had crashed
Oh
into a
no.
wall. And I was like, I'm going to get on with these guys because they're ripping the piss out of me and they've known me
Just
for like
sign
10
that piece of
minutes.
paper.
Like,
Praise it.
yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
God. Yeah.
But it wasn't me, but he was just ripping the piss out of me, And I just thought, this is like, people up here are so much friendlier and they actually want you to like, it's, everyone wants you to like win
Yeah,
almost.
I
Like
get
they
that
kind of like
feeling.
it's really
Yeah, I
supportive.
get that feeling because I know people in London were a bit of a closed book, but like I don't blame them either. Um, like yeah, everyone just wants to help you to learn. And I was like, oh, this is what I've wanted all along. I was like, okay, like why did I not think about this earlier? Like why have I never considered it? I think in my head, if I was moving back from Dublin to the UK, I would put myself closer to family and home. Like I'm from the south, I'm from South Wales. Don't sound it anymore, as I've been told. No, my husband's like, yeah, you definitely are Welsh, babe. Give people five, and they'll get it from you. Um, so I'd always kind of want to go close to, and he's from the southwest, kind of. Like you said, your sister was sort of in Frome at the moment. He's literally what 20-30 minute drive from there. So yeah,
Yeah.
like we'd kind of put ourselves as close as we possibly can. But actually, like you're not far away from anyone. And realistically, if you lived up the road from somebody, you'd never see them.
Yeah. This is what me and my sister said. We've said like if we lived near each other, we'd probably see each other twice a week, but like it'd be like, right, I'm just whipping into like I've like, you coming for dinner? Are you doing this? Are you doing like it wouldn't be when we see each other now, it's like for a few days and it's like solid, like, quality time. Whereas I think if you're around the corner from each other, you could easily get like pissed off with each other because you're just like knocking on each other's door. Well, I'd just go to annoy my sister really more than anything. But I do think as well, being in a city or close to a city that's got a lot going on, but that like it's not overwhelmingly large, there's so much you can do. Like there's so many cool gigs on, like there's like so many cool creatives in the Northwest as well. I will say, like hands down, some of the best creatives I know are up here. And I'm not just saying that because I'm friends with quite a lot of them, but like they're so like such a wide variety of people. And the networking I've had up here has been insane. And I think out of say 100 people that I know, there's maybe like one or two that are arseholes.
That's all right. That's a good ratio. I can take. I'll take that. If I ever speak to you like in a year's time, I'll let you know if I found those people.
Yeah.
No, but I'm with you. Like people are warm and people are like people want to help you. And like I had a lot of positivity when like prior to the move, people were like, it's a great city. And and you're like, oh, people trying to feed me a dream here. Like you don't know. And I was like, you're only going to know if you go. And like, yeah, they were right. And I think with any city, like I just want to go out and do stuff. I like keeping busy, but I like having my own area of space really. There was a lot to do in Dublin and stuff like that. And, it is, and it is the only thing about Dublin, I will say that I felt not negative, but I felt like a kind of bit of on my life was it was really, really expensive. And I feel like it doesn't need to be. I don't know. It's a funny one. It doesn't need to be, but bars, restaurants are always full. Like shops are always full. Like it was a bustling high street. So I was like, maybe I'm broke and everyone else just isn't. I don't know. Or there's just like a real vibe for just going out and doing things. But I was like, could we just make it tiny little bit cheaper if that's okay? But yeah, look, I mean, a lot of people said that about Manchester as well. I noticed in the UK a little bit cheaper, but generally a lot of things they all sort of cost the same, don't they? So I was just like, not getting my hopes up for that. But yeah, a real great network of people, real warm. I find a lot of things shut on Mondays, which I'm a bit like, maybe I'm just not looking at the right
Yes.
things. I don't know. Maybe my day to stay in is the Monday.
Yeah, if you, I think it's Stockport, because I used to live close to Stockport. Everything in Stockport shuts on a
God.
Monday. There's quite a few, like, I think quite a few of the little towns, because they're open at the weekend and they've got quite a few indie shops. I think people go, we're shutting on a Monday. Like, I don't know whether it's just they don't want to be open 7 days a
Yeah,
week, I guess.
maybe
So,
it's interesting.
um,
I think I kind of landed on a Sunday. So when I came to Monday, I was like, oh, I think I need, like, any new city. I remember going to Dublin. The first thing I did was like, right, I'm just going to go into a bar, sit by a bar, and just chat to the person that worked there. Yeah, I think that was the Sunday, and I was like, I know I've worked tomorrow, but I was like, I think this will take the edge off. And I kind of wanted to do that on a Monday. I did my first day at work, and I was like, I just want to go out and have a little prosecco somewhere. And I was like, no, okay. Yeah, it's a funny one.
Yeah, I do think that sometimes when they're indie owned, they just kind of shut on a Monday, especially like the Northern Quarter. I mean, also Northern Quarter's changed a lot since we moved. We moved, God, 8 years ago, I think, and I think that's changed a lot. But I think on the whole, Manchester's such a nice, friendly city. It's, and there's so many creative bits, and like the little kind of pockets of other cities within the M60 are nice as well, like Stockport, and there's lots of other ones up north that are really nice, and there's lots of different things going on. It's something for everyone, I think, and I'm just so glad that you have felt welcomed as well by the Mancunian like crews, because they're just so nice.
And like all the people I've worked with since I've moved to Manchester, and our studio and stuff have been so lovely. Like, so big up to them as well. Thank you very much, guys. If you are due to listen to this, you've made me most welcome. I feel really bad because everyone's always like, "Do you want a brew?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't like tea." What am I going to do? I remember ringing my husband, and I was like, I don't like tea, mate. What am I going to do? I was like, they'll be fine. Just say you don't like tea, Sam, because they'll just keep offering it to you. I'm like, no, I'll have water if that's okay. And they're probably like, you can have a tea, like I'll make you one, it's fine. I'm like, no, I'm good. I'll just have water. Thank you very much. Break their heart, because I'm just like, I don't like tea. You can just imagine this, everyone's just soul just kind of like, no. What? How could you not like tea? I'm like, I do. I just like flavoured tea. I'm just a bit fancy.
I think that's it as well. Like, if you're in a studio, it's either someone's doing a coffee run and there's like 60 different coffees, or like hits afternoon and everyone's like, do you want a cup of tea? And just,
I always feel bad, and then heaven forbid, like people running around, because I remember like working for someone once, and the studio manager was like, you're not to get tea or coffee. She was like, you can offer wherever if you're going. She's like, but this person's notorious for asking for this, and you're not to get anyone tea. You're not to make coffee. You're not a waitress. You're an assistant. You need to be doing stuff. So if anyone says you need to go and get this, just ignore them. And I was a bit like, oh God, why would you tell me that? And I remember when someone called in sick and I had to cover for that person, and the person just like slammed their little cup down and was like, I want this. And I was like, oh no. And I was also a bit like, actually, no, like they were very nice in asking that. So I was just like, God, I sound really lame. But I was like, she just handed it out. I was like, boom, want this. And I was like, okay, cool. So I just left it there and ignored her. And I was a bit like, I've been told to ignore her, and everyone else is like, no, you're right. You stand your ground. And I'm like, okay, great. But like, I never minded if I was going to the water fountain and being like, would anyone like anything, carrying like about 5 cups, and everyone's like, yeah, I want this, I want that. You never mind, like, absolutely. But yeah, when people are just fit to banded, I thought, oh God. I was like, what do I do here? And she came back out and was like, where's my water? And I was like, I've been told not to get water for you. And I kind of like slipped up and was like, I've been told not to get it for you. I was like, if I'm to offer. But then I was like, what am I doing? I should have just got her the water. And everyone was like, no, you stick to your bit and you don't get a water. So I'm in this like little feud of like, I've been told what to do. This was obviously 10 years ago, by the way, in my first job. Like now I think I would just get the person water and be like, here you are. Put it at the end of the table maybe, just to annoy you further. But I just get you, just like all these little lame things that you get told. Honestly, like Devil Wears Prada moment where everyone's like running around doing stuff. I feel like that has been a little bit of my life, where everyone's just like, you have to do this or don't do this and stuff. Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, I think that happens to studio assistants though. I think it happens less now that people like studio assistants are told to like go and get people coffees. I think a lot of the time now it's like, oh, can you hold the scrim? Can you like grab me a light? Or I mean, I did once hear an older photographer ring a studio assistant to move their chair that they were stood next to. And I was like, that is rude. Also, like, it's not the 1970s. We don't do that to assistants anymore.
Oh, that's awful. Yeah, and I think when you're in that role, you're always mindful of the other person then that may work kind of like alongside you, under you. Then when you get to that point of asking a studio assistant to do something, I think you can always tell who's probably been a studio assistant in the business as well, just based on like what they ask for and how they work with that person. It's quite nice. You can always be like, did you do this role once? And they were like, yeah, how can you tell? And it's just like, just the way you go about it. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can always tell the people that have never done it. And yeah, it's interesting. And they go to try and turn the steamer on and they're like, oh, this has more than one button than I thought it would have. Yeah, mad thing.
But I do think assistants are getting more like, you know, like properly now, rather than like slamming down a cup of tea. Like, I would have probably told that person to fuck off, but that's just who I am. But
I think it's just that time, wasn't it, where you're like, you could have done that, and they'd be like, so you're not coming back tomorrow, and you'd be like, oh, I failed at life. I need to go pack my bags and go home to South Wales. That's the mentality that I was living with, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do think as well with that comes with age as well, right? So like when you're younger and you're in a role where you're trying to impress lots of people, and actually like your network's even more important when you're younger, because you never know who you're going to come back across in like 5 years' time. And that still happens now, but like I think now you could probably say to someone like you say, like, oh, piss off. Not making you a cup. Go make a cup of tea yourself.
You have to laugh.
Lazy.
Like, you've got more hands than I do. Off you go. The kitchen's on the left.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So what's involved with your art directing? So I know that like some art directors have to like work to a certain comp, and you know they've kind of got to fit things, and they've kind of got to maybe put stuff in a little leaflet or a catalogue, and they've got like certain areas they've got to go to. Is yours more a creative side of art directing rather than a kind of graphic side?
It's definitely not a graphic side, although that's something I do want to learn a little bit more, as a bit more brand and identity through that kind of means. But no, mine doesn't really sit that side. We have teams, sorry, not people. We have teams that kind of work in sort of like, you know, artworking, graphic design, social design, web design, not literal web design, but kind of, oh my God, what do you call it?
Oh, like the banners and stuff like that.
That's it. Yeah, they are web designs, but it's like a web graphic designer. There we go. Sorry guys if that's your role and that's not what it's called, but that's what came to my head right now, and I'm so sorry. We have all those people. So we're just literally working on, well, not literally work. It's a big job. Like, I'm kind of undermining myself here, and I've got to stop doing this. We're working on the kind of photographic aspect. So wherever gets us a photograph or a motion at the end of it, I'll start from like a briefing point. So I will get like a brief from the company a couple of weeks beforehand, depending on what the brief is. You know, if it's print, it's got a longer lead time. If it's digital, slightly shorter. We'll get an overview of what's sort of coming up for the year or for the quarter and different things through different means. And then I'll sort of like dissect that brief and look at the kind of like buyer's inspiration of like why they created certain collections, etc., who they're inspired by. And then kind of look at the deliverables and see where they're kind of going. So if they go into like social or web, if they've got a motion ask, if they're going into like marketing emails and different things, and if they're being used for like navigation or print in store. So a wide variety, all kind of different asks as well. Like what you'll give for print, you won't give for sort of social and digital. They can work, but you kind of wouldn't be given the same thing. You know, you kind of want it to grab you straight on your feed, don't you? Whereas navigation forms like a different bit of an imagery. So I'd be working kind of on the deliverables, you know, sourcing what we kind of need, working with photographer, then working with the stylist if it's a home shoot, for example, well, home and beauty, on like set builds, literally like down to sort of like seeing what kind of paints and what props they've got and approving those and thinking it's okay, because obviously like you don't want to use, especially for specific props from a specific other retailer, that's quite obvious. You obviously don't want to use that in your shoot, because you'll see on the Instagram they go, oh, where did we get that table, where did we get that mirror, and it's like,
yeah,
not from here, sorry guys, to crush your dreams. But yeah, I don't know whether they're like nudging the buyers to be like, maybe you should buy this. I don't know. But it'll always be like, it kind of crushes my dreams when I sometimes read the comments, because sometimes I read it and I'm like, someone will be like, this is really nice, the photography's really nice. I think, oh, hello. And then sometimes you'll read it and they'll have picked up on something that you wouldn't have. So it's quite nice to see, like, it's kind of like reporting, isn't it? But just like having it, I don't look at every single image every second of the day, but like I will have a look every now and then and just pick up on different things that we've posted and see how well they sort of do and how people are reacting to them and stuff. Because that's your feedback, really, isn't it? Alongside the business and buyers, like that's, I don't know, millions of people viewing it.
I was going to say your customer's your ultimate feedback anyway, right? Because that's who you want to hold onto the image. That's who you want to click through onto. If you've got buy-in links and stuff, that's who you want to click through. So as much as like the buyers and the company can have their influence, at the end of the day, if what they're trying to push out isn't hitting the right customer, or the customer isn't enjoying it, kind of null and voids what they want anyway.
Exactly, yeah. And like, it's all about like piecing puzzles together and stuff, isn't it? You'll see a massive collection, you think, oh, this is great, we've got loads to work with, and then often than not, sometimes when we get to shoot, like some of it gets cancelled or it gets pulled, or like you said about product, it doesn't make the deadline, so then that collection becomes slightly different, and then you've obviously kind of banked on what you've given out before, and you're like, okay, does this still work? Can we still push this like narrative through and stuff? But yeah, I'd like to go back to that. We would work with like photographer, stylists, like our assistants and stuff, to build a set, decide, paint, props, furniture, and then on the day, just like on set art direction as well. So the guys would kind of like go along, sort of like build their set and, put all the props together and everything. And the photographer will kind of get the different crops that we need to do, and we'll just work through an order, and then just direct it to kind of like get it on the right track and stuff. Most of the time, like, we'll hit it, they'll just need minor tweaks. Sometimes maybe when you've kind of had a reference and you sort of see it with your product and your set build, and maybe it's not slightly working, we're like, right, let's retweak this to make this what it needs to be. And then the same for video as well, just kind of sitting alongside it, being sort of filmed and signing off the shot as it's going along. So that's what I do in a nutshell, should I say.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a bit of crossover from styling as well there, because often when I'm on set before, so again, one thing that got changed with COVID with me is if I'm on an interior set, sometimes now you have to send a image to the AD or to the client via Teams, rather than the client or AD being with you. So often, like, we would be art directing to a certain point and kind of being like, right, okay, so this is kind of working how we want, it's got a nice flow, we've got all the product in where we want, and then sending it off. So similar to you actually seeing the shots as they're kind of progressing, really, I guess. So there's a bit of crossover there, I think, with like styling. And if you've been styling a long time or shooting for a long time, you kind of know what works. Because I once had a work experience person come on set with me and a photographer who'd been doing shooting for like 20 years. And this teenager was like, so why have you guys moved this here? And we just moved silently together, his lighting, I'd moved the product. And I was like, it just looked wrong. And he was like, but how do you know that it looked wrong? And I was like, it just did. I couldn't explain any further.
That's mad, actually.
Yeah.
Like, we've had a lot of work experience people come on our shoots and stuff, and it's such an eye-opener, isn't it? Like when people come in, they do ask you questions about what you're doing, and you're kind of like, oh, I know exactly what I'm doing, but I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe I don't then. Maybe like, there is a lot of that, like, kind of like unconscious kind of doing stuff, maybe, or like, it's kind of, it's not like automatic, it's not robotic, it's just kind of like, it's just, I don't know, it's a feeling, isn't it? It's like knowing.
Yeah. And I think when you've worked with like so many products over how long have I been doing it? Like 13, 14, 15 years maybe. You kind of just go like, well, I know that that's going to look odd. I know that that nutcracker ballerina is not going to look right there because the mantelpiece is just going to stick out of her head or whatever. But then explaining it to someone who's completely new is really hard to explain composition and everything like in a more simplified form. And I think like I found it really hard. And then me and the photographer just looked at each other and just went, fuck, do we know what we're doing?
We do, guys. We do. We know exactly what we're doing.
Yeah.
And you're like,
we know.
No, actually, maybe I don't. Like, maybe my whole entire life is a waste. I don't know.
And then you sit there and you have an existential crisis. Like,
it's mad, isn't it? Because if you were a fly on the wall to some of these conversations where it's like, I just spent my day. So we had this nutcracker that we couldn't move from the fireplace, and then we moved it to this side. Like, I think like when I offload on my husband, sometimes he's just like, what on earth did you do today?
Yeah. Oh, my other half is the same. So I'll say to him, like, oh, yesterday, classic example. Yesterday, honestly, Sam, it was a moment. I was stretching a swimming cap under a hot water tap to try and get the creases out because obviously you can't steam it because it'll like melt.
Okay.
And then I had it on like a head form and I was stretching it and blasting it with a hairdryer.
Oh my God.
Like, what a job. Like, my job's so weird. And then I'll say this things like similar to you with your husband. I'll say to my husband, like, he's like, how's your day been? And I'm like, well, I've been trying to stretch some creases out of a swimming cap. And he's like, your job is so weird.
It's so weird because they can try and imagine you doing it in the house. So imagine you were like packing your suitcase and you were trying to get this like swimming cap done so that when you got the other side, it was like in perfect form. And you'd both together trying to puzzle it. It's like putting IKEA furniture together, isn't it? Like, I do wish that sometimes I could just do like a little like Freaky Friday situation where we just swap jobs. Because one, I would love to go to his place of work because I think the one thing throughout COVID we noticed is that we could all listen to each other's calls, kind of almost all of them. When you share like a 1-bedroom flat, then you're like, we all have to share the same room. And I just remember sitting there listening, going, God, your place of work is fun. He does something very different to me. He works in kind of like the finance area, and I was just like, I have no idea what anyone said, but nobody said that with a smile. I was like, it's definitely dry as hell where you work, but apparently they're all great cracks. So I was like, okay, fine. But yeah, we describe things to each other. I'm just like, I'd love to give your area a go. But I was like, I need you to go to a photographic studio and just absorb everything. I think the one thing he was like, don't bring your work home. And I was like, oh, well, we bought a steamer because I was like, I can't be ironing. Just absolutely not. So I've had to teach him to steam, and he's just like, oh my God, like this is just the worst. He was like, and you did this for an entire year, just steaming clothes? I was like, no, I did more than that. Where I was like, I was like, there's an art to this, trust me. I was like, maybe you need to go and get yourself a studio assistant job or something, or like styling assistant, and then you go and see how easy it is. And
it's so funny that you say about switching jobs, because sometimes I think like my other half drives lorries. Ooh. And I'm like, I don't know how he does it without crashing into stuff.
Oh, right.
Like I would crash into stuff. Like there's just, I don't know, I just would. And he's like, yeah, just reverse it with one hand. And I'm like, I know which way the trailer's going. And like, he'll be like, yeah, and I've delivered here and done this and had to squeeze in this gap. And I'm like, oh God, my mind's blown. But then he must feel the same when I'm telling him about trying to get creases out of a silicone swimming cap.
Yeah.
So
maybe. Or maybe something a bit more adventurous. I don't know. Yeah, because everyone always comes up to me and they're like, oh, did you meet anyone famous or anything? I'm like, no, man. Like, I shoot still life. Like, there ain't anyone famous. I was like, the most famous thing I've shot is like a really like limited edition Gucci bag and like this watch that was like 450 grand. Like, that's as famous as we're getting, really, to anything impressive. Yeah.
It's funny because like I've styled footballers and stuff when I used to do model work. Like I'm same as you, really, still life is my bag. It's one thing I think I really love. And like I did get asked last year, I had to do some massive boxes and like make them look like someone had got a sofa or whatever, you know, like some big weird props. And the guy who booked me for it was like, yeah, so Rio Ferdinand's going to be there.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, okay. And then I get there and I'm sweating my bollocks off trying to like finish taping this box up. And there's like Rio Ferdinand and there's like other people chatting. I'm sure it's Rio Ferdinand. And other people chatting, and I'm like, I look the least presentable out of everybody. I look a bit fucking mental because prop stylists always do look a little bit mental because we're always doing something weird. And then like he came over and was like, oh, do you know what the loo is? Do you know what this is? And I'm like, give me a minute, like sweat dripping into my eyes. Like it's never like I don't think our job is glamorous, like in the slightest.
No, definitely not. A part of me was a bit like when I moved, I was like, maybe I need a new wardrobe because I'm working in like a little bit of a different room now. And then I was like, no, just stick, like everyone else around the office would be dressed like head to toe because they just sat at a desk typing away. And where they're like lifting stuff, like moving carpets around the office. And I'm just like, no, you just don't wear white unless it's like overalls, I guess. You just don't wear anything glamorous, and you'd be lucky if I like had hair down and makeup on, but like I've made an effort this side, so yeah,
that's it. I'm like my hairdresser, bless her, I've got like quite long, like shoulder length, bit longer than shoulder length hair, and she's like, so how often do you have it down? And I'm like, maybe once a week. Yeah, because you're just like, I'll have it start off the day with it down, and then 2 hours in, I'm shifting a sofa, like you say, a bit of carpet, a bed. Someone's like, can you just help me lift this door or this bit of set? And you're like, right, hair up in a bun then. No point doing my makeup because it's just going to sweat into my eyes.
Or you're moaning about your skin and it's just like, oh, well, why do you think your skin's so bad? And it's like, probably spend most of my day touching my face, to be honest. Like usually getting something out of my face or put my hand on my head because I'm just like, right, what are we doing now? Or something hits me in the face, or like, quite an obvious one when I was photographing, I'd have a camera in my face most of the day, like, it's crazy, isn't it? All the little things you have to think of, like, tough lives, guys, tough lives.
It really is. I think, do you know what? It's nice to hear that somebody else feels the same as me. And like, I never wear anything nice in work. Like, well, the stuff I have is nice, but like it's mostly secondhand or like vintage or whatever. And I just think like, I think today I spilt pasta down me today. But then like yesterday, I like shook the oat milk in work and got it like from my head to my toes. And I was like, this isn't even work. And I've work stuff that's got me mucky. It's like my own fucking doing. Like, so there's no point me wearing something nice to work because I'll just get covered in crap.
Yeah, I'm with you. And then it's even worse when your like studio is actually in the same building as your head office, like from where all those beautiful people are wandering around. And then you guys just wander out this door looking like really feral and stuff. And they're like, Christ, where have they been?
Yeah, and we've not seen daylight for like 12 hours. And you're like, oh.
And when you turn up to the Christmas party, they're like, bloody hell, okay, you guys scrub up well, don't you?
No. You're like, for those 3 occasions a year, we're wearing something nice and got makeup.
I like how I'm like, that was probably just me, and everyone else was actually really nice and fine, and it was just me that was like, no, just scrape my hair back, no makeup, don't care. Yeah, it was probably just me, to be fair.
No, I think there's a lot of us actually, that there's a lot of us who are like, fuck this, we're going in, we're like, you're lucky if we've got like moisturizer on or sun cream.
Makeup and my electricity bill with my straighteners, guys, every little every little
That's
help.
it.
Jesus.
The only tip I actually genuinely do have is I once got my face UV tested to see whether UV light like had affected my skin, and turns out that standing under studio lights for 8 hours a day for 40 hours a week does affect the UV under your skin. So factor 50 is a must on your face.
I always wear sun cream anyway, but now I'm thought about all the times that maybe like my arms have maybe underneath those lights. God, who needs a holiday? Just literally a couple of continuous lights and you're sorted. Set up a deck chair and who needs a holiday?
That's
who
it.
Needs fresh air and windows, eh?
Yeah, that's it. Who needs it? Just lay under a continuous light. You are sorted.
Yeah, the things you didn't know. All the blooming doctors and everything out there are like, do you work in a studio by any chance? It's like, how did you know? Madness. God.
Oh dear. Well, I've got one final question for you, and you can answer it however you wish, however you see fit. But what inspires you, Sam?
kind of lots of different things. I was thinking about this the other day. Today actually. Sorry, it's obviously clearly been a long day. I'm putting a brief together where I'm kind of like hit a little bit of a wall. I'm actually happy with the way I want to take it, but I need to rein it in a little bit on what I'm doing. And I went away for a weekend for our anniversary. We'd been married a year in 2 weeks' time, so we'd booked everything before we moved. Classic us. And we went to a really nice sort of like staycation, proper like English country house. And yeah, I was kind of stuck on the brief before I went, and I think that sort of trip really inspired me. And a funny story is when I was applying for my art director's role, it came with a bit of a brief, and I was obviously in Dublin at the time. My partner's family are all Irish, and we took a train to the west of Ireland to go and see them. And I remember doing a brief, and I remember just getting to his nan's house, which is sort of a beautiful old house, like pink walls, dark furniture, really kind of like ornate deco and stuff like that. And I was just like, this is perfect. Started taking like loads of pictures of her house, being like, I'm so sorry. This is really helping me with my brief. Just get inspired by just like the randomest things. And usually what happened is like I used to go on holiday in like August. We kind of go the same time every year. We're quite fortunate to be able to do that. And usually when I'm in the like peak of my rest, I get flushed with like creative ideas. So I'd always have to go on holiday with a bit of a notepad and just write them down just so I can get them out of my head and like properly relax. But that in the last couple of years, that's not been happening. And I'm like sitting on holidays waiting for this little light bulb moment, like, oh, come on. And it's just not happening. Sometimes art galleries and museums kind of like jog something in. I think it's just kind of like ingrained in me after university. Like this is where you find your kind of inspiration and stuff. And yeah, loads of little things, usually just like things people say, food that we eat, like, you know, if we went and did like a random tasting menu or something like that, the journey that they went through, I was like, well, that's really thoughtful, like how you've done all these different things, and how people look at stuff helps you look at things in a different way. So yeah, lots of things really, not just one zone. It could be anything, as literally like us here talking about this might like I might think about something. Yeah.
That's really nice, because I think it's similar to how a lot of creatives think. They kind of see inspiration in lots of different things throughout their experience, and like you say, you'll go somewhere and be like, that's take some pictures of that, I'll log that for another day, because that might be something that maybe the color palette I'll come back to, or maybe the textures, or you know, maybe the feeling of that tasting menu, like the restaurant plus the food plus, you know, the whole experience you've got there. I think that's really cool. That's really cool that you're drawing it from lots of different places.
Yeah, it's handy for sure, especially if you've got a bit of a roadblock. I mean, it never happens when you want it to, but it always happens when you kind of don't need it. So it's good to kind of park it when you've got it, I think.
Oh, well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I have so enjoyed listening to your story and your journey. And I'm like, this is so cool that you've been on and done lots of different things and experienced lots of things. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me as well.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please rate, follow and share, as it really helps this little podcast out. And if you have found value in the podcast and you have the means to, I do have a Buy Me a Coffee link in the show notes. This will help keep the podcast going. Join me next week for another fantastic guest. Bye!